Welcome to Wine Soundtrack USA. Listen to the passion with which producers narrate their winery and their world in 30 answers. Discover their stories, personalities, and passions.
Hello, friends and listeners of Wine Soundtrack. This is Allison Levine, and today I'm with Alan Baker from Cartograph Wines here in Sonoma Valley. Welcome, Alan, and tell us about Cartograph and how we got here.
Yeah, well, thank you for asking for the conversation. Cartograph is a small winery. We're about 2,000 cases per year. We're not a huge player in the market, but we're focused on Pinot Noir specifically, with also kind of a specialty in Alsace-styled whites. So we do a Gewürztraminer and a Riesling, both in the bone-dry style, as you might find an Alsace Riesling. So we're based in Healdsburg, which is about 70 miles just straight north of San Francisco, which puts us right in the heart of Pinot country, with the Russian River Valley is right out our door from Healdsburg. And we also source some Pinot from the Mendocino Ridge at AVA, which is up in the hills right close to the Pacific Ocean in Mendocino County, north of us.
And how much wine are you, well, you said 2,000 cases, but how much wine is coming from any estate vineyard or all sourced fruit?
So we source fruit, but we also in 2016 purchased our first estate vineyard. So as of maybe a month ago or so, we released our first Pinot blend off of that property. So we finally have a Cartograph Estate Pinot on the market. And then we work with probably 5 or 6 other vineyards throughout the Northern California.
Congratulations on your vineyard.
Thank you. It's very satisfying because we've had wines from that vineyard before we purchased it. And we kind of had an idea that it really suited our stylistic goals, and to have the wine come out as well as it did in the first year, we're super happy.
So tell me a little bit about how you came up with the name Cartograph and the meaning behind it. And I know that you're a former radio spokesperson, so you've got this down, speaking on record. But
yeah, so we had, if you look at our label, it's basically, the logo on it is a circle with 5 points that are all connected. And those 5 points are the 5 points on a globe that Serena Laurie, my partner and in life and in business, we really wanted to encode our story in the image that's on our label. So we sat down at our kitchen table when we moved to Healdsburg, and we started putting push pins in a globe, and we narrowed it down to the 5 places that define how we each got into wine, how we met each other, and then how we landed in Healdsburg to start making our wine under a new label. And because we have this whole map thing, globe thing going on, we took the word cartography and dropped the Y. That's Cartograph. That's where the name comes from.
Fantastic. Hopefully, as I ask some of these questions, I'm going to find out where these 5 points are and what they mean. But I wanted to know what your first memory is relevant to wine.
Oh, I was just a very casual wine drinker, until I had kind of an aha moment, and it was an Alsace, a 98 Alsace dry Riesling, bone dry. Almost no color, but it just absolutely captivated my attention and just shifted the entire way I looked at wine. Like, how could something that, had almost no color, it just didn't look impressive in the glass, but just the aromatics and the flavors, they just kept evolving and winding. It just sucked me in. And from that point forward, I literally just, at the point where I was thinking more about wine than I was thinking about my previous job as a radio producer, I finally decided in 2005 to just sell the house, move to California, and start knocking on doors. And so that's what I did.
And so while that wine might be your first memorable wine, are there any other memorable wines in your life and the occasion with which you drank it, and somewhere in the world in your travels, or was it here?
So that wine, the 98 Riesling, was while I was sitting in a kayak floating on a lake in Minnesota. And so it's a useful thing to know how to, carry a wine key and a stem and a bottle of wine while you're kayaking. But it was part of my ritual to get out on the lake in the evening and kind of just calm down from the day. And so that was a biggie, and that's one of the points that's on our label. I've had some really amazing wines, and not necessarily in specific locations, but having a DRC Echezot that just blew my socks off. But I was just sitting in a winery with a group of friends that were, we had a tasting group, and it's like I can remember where we were in the barrels when we sat down and had that tasting and that one glass of that one sip of wine. So, those memories do get imprinted on you. And my partner Serena had a similar experience. She was a casual wine drinker, and her first career was in psych nurse. So she was an adolescent mental health care nurse and was out celebrating one of her a graduate degree with friends and it was a Napa Valley cab. It was kind of a Schaefer Hillside Select, one of those benchmark Napa Cabernets, and it just completely knocked her socks off because she spent her time on the East Coast splitting her childhood between Connecticut and France. So her mother's French. So her wine drinking up to that point was very European focused. So we both kind of had aha moments elsewhere, and we knew that we wanted to get closer to the wine world in some way, and we both wanted to be in a more kind of entrepreneurial environment where we could stretch our wings a little bit and try new things. And so I landed in Healdsburg in 2005, and she moved to San Francisco in 2001. So that's how we both got to California. So those were our kind of aha moments.
Fantastic. Among all the populations of the world, who do you think drinks the best in terms of quality?
Who drinks the best or who makes the best?
Who drinks the best?
Wow, that's hard to say because I haven't spent a lot of time living amongst other cultures. So I feel like here in the United States, we have an amazing opportunity to try wines from everywhere. You know, I love Italian wines. I love Burgundy, obviously, being a Pinot geek. I love Riesling of every stripe. But I think we're pretty lucky in the States to have import markets that we can try, from Malbec to just unknown grapes from the middle of nowhere, remote reaches of Italy and things like that, which I don't know if every other culture has that. I think they might be more focused on what comes from nearby. And I think we, just as Americans, have a more kind of wide-reaching kind of curiosity that you might not have the ability to if you didn't have all those opportunities to have wines from every corner of the planet.
Right. So as you've established yourself in Healdsburg, I'm going to guess that you've built a little cellar and started collecting wines. I don't know if they're mostly local wines or if they're from around the world, but what would you say is your most valued wine in your collection?
Oh, wow. Personally, I still have one bottle of the 98 Alsace Riesling that flipped me onto wine in the first place. I have no idea why I'm keeping that wine. It wasn't an expensive wine. It's probably way over the hill, but I just can't bring myself to drink it. And the crazy thing is Serena and I were in her mother's hometown in the Pintrez, France, which is up on the northwestern coast in Brittany. And little teeny town, there's no wine shops, there's no butcher, there's no so basically a little caravan comes in, and once a week there's a little wine van that sells wine. And we were just out, we thought, oh, let's go check out what's down there. And the guy that was running that little wine shop out of his van had a single bottle of the same producer of the wine. It was a Dietrich Alsace Riesling. Wow. And it was in the middle of nowhere. And he looked at me and he said, oh no, you don't want that. That's my display bottle. I'm like, no, I have to have that. And so we bought it and carted it home and drank it in Healdsburg. It was the craziest thing in the world to find the one producer that I've never been able to find since in this teeny little fishing village in Brittany.
And did it live up to all your expectations and continue the romance?
Yeah, it was, still in that bone dry style, crisp, just straightforward and honest. And that's kind of the style of wine that we focus on too.
So do you think in your exploration in both of drinking wine and making wine that there's a such thing as a perfect variety?
Not necessarily, but I do. As much as we're focused on Pinot as a brand, which is 95% of what we do, I do believe that Riesling is probably the most versatile grape on the planet. And, it can go from absolutely bone dry to super sweet and be a stunning wine at every spot on that spectrum. So I don't know other grapes that can do that. So I'm constantly intrigued and exploring Riesling from, all different places. But I think Riesling's probably the biggie in my book.
And what is your opinion on wine critics and scores?
They definitely have lost a lot of influence. So I think scores are less important as kind of social networks have grown and recommendations are easier to find. It's easier to kind of find a peer group with you, which you might identify with, that has a certain stylistic outlook that you trust, and recommendations from them will make sense. I think chasing scores is tough unless you seriously love bigger, more oaky, kind of showier wines. Then you're risking losing your way to try to get that score. That said, would I love a 95 pointer from somebody? Sure. Do we send them off every once in a while? Yeah. But our goals stylistically are really to fall on the more subtle, nuanced side of Pinot and the Alsace varieties. So you'll read the review and we're like, oh, we finally did it. Like all these glowing words, 88 points. So it's like, and I totally understand how it works. They're reviewing for a broader audience than I might be producing for. This very kind of more austere style of white and kind of lighter, more floral, kind of pretty, dare I say, feminine style of Pinot. It doesn't impress the critics the way you cross your fingers and hope, well, maybe this is the one, this is the beautiful wine that they're going to love.
Well, it just doesn't knock you over the head per se.
Yeah.
So it's not that first initial wow, but a wine that you just enjoy.
And, I think you need to spend time with a single wine to really kind of figure out where it fits. And most of what we're doing is trying to produce wines that are very much aimed at the dinner table and to be paired with food. So we're not really kind of cocktail wine producers, which I drink plenty of nice round starters for while we're cooking or whatever. But, if you're going to spend your nights worrying about it and your days talking about it, it better be something that you absolutely believe in 100%.
So speaking about food and wine, how do you approach food and wine pairing? Do you believe that there are hard and fast rules, or what are you looking for when you're pairing?
I don't think there are hard and fast rules. I really feel like if it works for you, then it's fine. There are definite mismatches. I think we get approached by like chocolate producers to do a wine and chocolate pairing. Pinot just doesn't really sing with chocolate for the most part. And some cheeses are really tough too. So we have on our website and for our wine club, we do a lot. Every release, we have recipes to go with each wine that we send out to the club members. And so that has been building for, almost 10 years now. So we've got a deep kind of recipe book that we share with our clients, especially if, like the Riesling's super bright, high acid. You can go either way. You can pair with like a citrus, a ceviche, or a dressing that's very citrusy, or it can cut through a rich sauce. So, it's not like one direction wins. And with our sparkling, potato chips, popcorn, it's just as fun as oysters.
I like that. Sparkling wine and potato chips. That sounds really good.
It works.
So as a wine drinker, red, white, or rosé?
Oh, rosé.
Still or sparkling?
Both. Yes, we produce a little rosé from Pinot, and we literally have to like stash away a few cases so that we don't run out. But we're about 6 bottles from the end, and it's not even the end of the year yet. So we're kind of bummed that it's going away. However, we have, for the first time, released 2 sparkling wines, and there's a Brut Rosé in those 2 wines. So we're set for bubbles.
Wow. So, and when it comes to bubbles, do you have a bias towards domestic? I mean, obviously you're making your own now, but other than that, what do you find yourself drinking more, domestic or champagne?
I think both Serena and I are really drawn to more kind of finesse style of bubbles. So definitely champagne is high on the list, but there are some really beautiful wines made right out our back door. So we also tend to look for wines that spent more time on the lees in the bottle aging. I feel like those kind of brioche and caramel and graham cracker notes that you get on wines that have had time to spend on the lees really just make more fulfilling wines for us. And so when we decided to do bubbles, to do a sparkling, the base was 100% Chardonnay. And then we did the secondary fermentation on the lees and just walked away for like 4 years. So left it aging on the lees for 4 years, and we disgorged it in February of 2018 and have just released it. So it's got a lot, aromatically, it's got a lot going on. I'm really happy we were able to hold off the release.
That's probably the biggest challenge of making sparkling wine is the patience.
Yes. Part of the reason it lasted so long was I'm very slow in getting my label designs figured out. It was probably ready to go a year before that. But once we got the labels done, it was like, okay, let's get this done.
So what do you think a non-drinker loses out on by not tasting your wines?
Oh my. I feel like we have people that come into our tasting room. So we have a tasting room that's open to the public, and we have people come in and they're like, oh, I don't drink Pinot, or I don't drink this, or I don't drink that. And I think whether you're a beer person or not, or whatever you drink, I just feel like there's so many amazing tastes and experiences and combinations that I feel like not at least trying something is you're kind of missing out on an opportunity. But I'm kind of endlessly curious when it comes to what's in the bottle. There are things that people are like, I'm not touching that. Like, I have to at least try it. It's like, yeah, it was a $9 bottle of wine. It's been sitting there for 4 years. I at least have to try.
Yeah. Got to try everything one time at least.
Exactly. At least it's a learning opportunity.
Mm-hmm. So if space aliens were to land on your new property that you have, what is the wine that you would want to present them with?
Wow. Probably our new estate Pinot. So we did a couple of fun experiments. So 2016 was the first year that we managed the grape growing and everything on the property. And so, being kind of a nerd that I am, I made sure that I isolated a couple of rows from each block and vinified that wine separately. So we have clone-specific wines from specific blocks that we bottled as clone-specific wines. And then you can taste through all those and then try the blend that was made from all of various batches of different lots off the property. Can kind of see, okay, the Pommard clone brings a certain richness to the blend, and the 667 gives it that really vibrant acidity and brightness, and the 115 adds some rich cherry notes. So it's kind of fun to like taste all the bits and pieces and then show the finished blend, just so you can get an idea of really how a wine from a single property can have all these various facets. And it's because of what you do in the winery to try to like bring out different qualities from different places on the property.
Well, speaking of different qualities and what you're trying to do as a winemaker expressing this, how much do you think vintage plays into that? Do you see that there's a lot of variation from year to year, or are there more similarities?
Part of the reason we're attracted to Riesling and Pinot Noir is both of those grapes are fairly transparent as to where they come from. So I think we're very lucky in that, being a small independent winery, we don't have to hit the same stylistic target every season. And so we do have a fair amount of vintage variation. But over time, the vineyard always wins. Location matters more than clone. So wines that from one year to the next might seem like they've got a fair amount of differentiation, 5 years down the road, like, they're from the same place. They're siblings, absolutely. And so I feel like the variation is most discernible early in the life, and over time the vineyard location really starts to shine. And that's if you haven't taken a heavy hand with your oak program, or so we try to stay out of the way. I mean, we're very careful to try to respect what's coming out of each location. So all of our vineyard designate wines are maybe at most 25% new oak. We're trying to, it's not about my oak program. If that's the case, then my ego's in the way. But we do one wine that we call Transverse, which is the first wine I blend out of the cellar every spring. And it basically ignores all AVA boundaries and vineyard boundaries. So I think it's just labeled North Coast. So it comes from Northern California. And that gives me, the winemaker, the opportunity to actually blend a wine rather than just bow down to the vineyard and say, okay, that was the year, that's what that vineyard gave us. And so that's been a fun contrast to do it's all about the vineyard approach, and then also have a blended wine where I can say, okay, what was that year about, and try to encapsulate the year to year differences in the vintages. So some years there'll be a unifying feature that stretches across almost all your fermentations. This year, I'm not going to know that until February, because there's a lot of variation. We had, a warm summer and then it turned cool. And so the ripening period was really slow and drawn out, and we got a little bit of rain. So some stuff got picked after the rain. So there's a lot of colors on the palette for blending in the spring. Looking forward to that.
So you're talking about things that you're going to have to see in the spring. Are there any predictors at the beginning of harvest that will dictate the outcome of harvest?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you are going into, so harvest is typically September, like the first weeks of September for us. And if you're going into early August and your sugars are accumulating and a lot of heat is on the way, you're probably going to have to let the fruit hang there a little bit longer. So it's going to come off a little bit riper. So just kind of feeling the weather patterns throughout the summer, you kind of have an idea of where you might land. that's where we thought we were going this year. And then in the middle of August, the temperature just dropped off the cliff and ripening just stopped.
So much for predictors.
Yeah. But at the same time, that meant that the grapes that were closest came off with a little more richness, and those that were way behind are super lean in the tank and in the barrel right now. So trying to figure out how to bridge that gap. So even from the same vineyard. So we've got vineyards that were harvested, almost a month apart in distance. And normally I'm done picking Pinot in maybe a 10-day to 2-week time period, and we're done. And this was, way over a month between our first and our last harvest.
Do you have any rituals that you follow when harvest is starting?
We don't do like a blessing of the grapes or anything like that. It's about the time that there's a flower that we see in Northern California that's called a naked lady. It's just a big pink, like lily looking thing, and it just bursts. So the foliage comes out in the spring and dies back, and then that bulb throws off this big pink flower. And that's the thing that as soon as we see one of those blooming, we start to panic, and we start cooking meals and putting them in our freezer. We, stock up the beers. Like basically we start hoarding as soon as we see that. So I wouldn't say it's a ritual. It's almost more of a panic.
So many producers are known for walking in their cellars and talking to their wine, or even walking in the vineyard. Have you been known to talk to your grapes or to the wine? And if so, what do you say to it?
I kind of talk to myself a lot, but I don't try to convince the wines in the bottle or the grapes in the vineyard to do anything that they don't want to do. It's kind of, I'll make comments about where they're going and why is that happening here. It's more just me running scenarios in my brain than trying to convince the grapes to do something.
Some people read tea leaves in the bottom of a cup to predict the future. If you could read something at the bottom of your wine glass, what would you want it to tell you?
Oh, I'd like it to talk back and say that global warming is going to stop. I'm a fairly scientific type of person. I'm not very superstitious. I do try to not predict what's going on in harvest until we've got wines in the barrel. But I'm very much a scientist when it comes to trying to figure out where we are. I pick based on flavor, but I do a lot of analysis to see where the chemistry is in the vineyard as well, just so I'm not fooling myself. Because sometimes, like this year, it was a really crazy, and this is super nerdy, but across the board, all winemakers that I talked to in the Northern California region, like our acid levels were completely weird. Like there's 2 primary acids in the grape. That's tartaric and malic. And our malic acids were way over half of our total acidity this year, when it's usually much less than that. And so if you think about the secondary conversion of malic to lactic acid in the barrel, well, tasting that juice, you're thinking your acid is going to be really strong. So you won't worry about getting the grapes out because they've got plenty of time to sit there. But if all that malic acid turns into a soft lactic acid, you could end up with a wine that is softer on the palate than you want and higher pH. So it was kind of a game, like watching the numbers and tasting, and eventually you have to just stop looking at the numbers and go on taste. But that absolutely informed kind of pick decisions for us, at least. So because I knew that what I was tasting at that moment was going to be quite different in February, March of next year.
When you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I thought I would be kind of on the scientific track. I read kind of those pop magazines for kids and science, Omni magazine and things like that. But then in college, when I've always been very, very involved with music. I was a vocal music major in college and sang throughout school. So that was kind of my first love. But I was convinced that I needed a career. So I was kind of going the pre-med route in college. And then I got to organic chemistry, and it totally kicked my butt.
When you're not working, how do you spend your free time? Do you have free time?
we're kind of workaholics. We're still building the business and trying to get our word out. We do try to spend at least one night a week out at our vineyard. We've got an Airstream trailer that we put out there, so we've got like a little spaceship to camp in. We do a little bit of travel. We've got family that we're trying to see as much as we can in the Midwest and on the East Coast.
No more kayaking? Because I was going to say, now that we're enjoying your lovely 2017 Riesling, and you've made it really easy with the screw cap.
Yes, we're big believers in the screw cap for the white wines and the rosé. I drove out here from Minnesota with a kayak on top of my Volvo, and it hasn't touched water. And I left it with a friend when I moved to San Francisco, and it recently returned to my backyard. So it's just sitting there staring at me. So I think I will get it cleaned up and get it in the water at some point, probably in the spring.
So you said you're into music. Do you have a favorite group or singer?
You know, I came of age listening to kind of the golden years of college radio. I'll admit, being from, southern Iowa, I wasn't really on top of punk. I think Sid was dead by the time I caught on to the Sex Pistols, but that was kind of what I was into as a kid. And today, it depends on what we're doing. If we're cooking, maybe a Sibelius symphony or something, just beautiful and rich. But my roots are kind of the golden era of college radio. So indie bands that you could never find unless you found this dialed in this radio station from the university nearby. And I kind of still have that kind of indie kind of alternative angle, so if like Spoon and Parquet Courts, groups like that kind of have, there's something kind of classic, kind of alternate punky rock about them, but at the same time, it's definitely updated and modern.
So if you're planning a romantic evening, I know you and your partner work together, but when you have those romantic evenings and you go to the vineyard and sit in the Airstream, what is the wine that you're enjoying for the mood?
Well, we almost always start with a bottle of rosé. That's where you start. That's just the rule. And then we've started exploring, I get a monthly shipment from a local wine shop, and we're basically exploring every corner of Burgundy right now. So kind of trying to make sure that I don't have a cellar palate. It's really easy to just pick what you've got at home or what's nearby, but to kind of force ourselves to really explore and to learn new areas that, unheard of or very seldom mentioned, like corners of Burgundy. I think it's been a real beautiful education. So we try to do that because, not only are we enjoying great wine, we're also learning and experiencing kind of a new twist on a region that we love.
I like that. So for a romantic evening, instead of going back to some old school traditions, you're exploring and learning and trying new things. Yeah,
we tend to be we're not very sentimental souls when it comes right down to it. There are certain wines that we love and we'll always come back to, but we just love to explore and to find new things.
What is the best piece of advice you ever received?
Best piece of advice I ever received when it relates to wine is don't do it.
Don't make it?
Yeah, the very first guy that gave me a job in the wine biz is don't. It might seem romantic, it might seem like it's a great thing, but and I had no idea. Once I finally kind of figured out where I might land in the wine world and that winemaking is possible for me, it's been we had an 8-year plan. It's always an 8-year plan. So we're coming up on year 10 and we're still working on profitability. So would I change it? No, I love, I get to spend my days doing what I absolutely love. So I wouldn't change that, but it's a long road and you have to be patient and you have to improvise ways to get things paid off. And it's a tough business to be in. There's a lot of competition.
If you could offer advice to our listeners, what kind of advice would you like to give them?
Just keep exploring, try new things, search out small producers that are doing interesting things. I think a lot of people get in a place where they want the same thing every time, which I totally understand. But I think within exploring just within a smaller range, you don't have to say, okay, we're going to Malbec to, Pinot Gris or whatever. But if you say I want to explore Western Sonoma County or something like that, I think the information's out there. There's so much information. It's so easy to order wines online and to explore and to try to find just what it might be that surprises you or going farther into a stylistic, direction that you're interested in, whether it be natural winemaking or really austere, bright, no residual sugar, Alsace style Riesling or something like that.
There's a whole world out there.
There is. It's big, and it keeps getting bigger.
What would you say your proudest achievement in your work is to date?
We've worked long and hard to try and find the right place to purchase land and to make wine off of a single property. And I think the 16 estate Pinot Noir from the Cartograph estate has really met all of our stylistic goals. And to be able to get there in the first year that we owned the property is really exciting. So I think, and watching the fruit quality improve in our farming, I think I'm most proud of our farming more so than the winemaking, but I feel like that's the exciting thing, is to really, really understand from the pruning, from every pruning decision to the finished wine, understanding how it affects the final product and the joy you get out of doing that. It's something that I'll never get tired of.
So if a VIP person, living or deceased, from any walk of life, was sitting in a restaurant enjoying a glass of wine while the paparazzi was taking a photo from the outside, and in that photo, there was a bottle of your wine sitting on the table, who would you want that person to be?
Does that mean it's somebody that the paparazzi would have to be taking pictures of, or somebody that I think they should be taking pictures of?
Completely up to you. Someone you think they should be taking photos of. But who would you want drinking your wine if you could have anyone drink it?
Anyone. Wow. You know, in my professional career as a engineer and technician, I was very much focused on living composers. So, and I feel like I'd like our wines to have a certain sensibility that music kind of comes into play. So someone like maybe a Steve Reich, you know, it's engaging music. It's repetitive, but it keeps drawing you in, and you learn more about it, and it kind of shows you how to listen to it. And I think if you're spending that much time with a wine can educate you on what it has to share and kind of open your mind, or an Arvo Pärt or somebody like that who's just, you know, they've got a timeless kind of sensibility to their music, and that I would love to think that our wines have that share something in common with their approach to their music and their life in drinking wine as well.
So complete the sentence for me. A table without wine is like
breakfast. Although that's not fair either, right? Like there's plenty of good things to have with breakfast, but yeah, no, it's just not. It's not right. It's wrong.
It's wrong. What are 3 wines you would take with you to a deserted island?
Boy. Well, I'd probably take that bottle of 98 Alsace Dietrich Riesling, even
the one you refuse to open.
Yeah. That would mean that there's hope that we're going to get rescued, right? You know, I would love to have some more DRC Escherzo, right? Like, why not? But boy, okay. So I would have the Riesling. I would have, oh boy, there's so many awesome Grand Cru Burgundies. It would have to be a Burgundy, and then maybe a wine from our vineyard, just to make sure that we have a bit of home with us as well.
I like that. I think that's a good combo. What is one winemaking area in the world that you still want to explore?
You know, as much as we love to drink Burgundy, I have spent almost no time there. You know, and having, you know, a partner who's half French, I think we need to spend the time. But we just, you know, I jumped in to the wine world like 13 years ago and have basically been running as fast as I can to every time you hit a brick wall, you got to turn left and try something else. You know, winemaking wasn't where I thought I might end up. It just kind of got there eventually. And now I'm super excited to be there. But what was the question?
What winemaking region in the world would you like to explore? You answered it, Burgundy.
Yeah, it would definitely be Burgundy. But there are so many amazing places in Italy that if I'm going to relax and enjoy wines from a place where I am, I would love to just spend, you know, a month landing in a few different locations in Italy and just absolutely drinking in this amazing culture and the wines. Like, I feel like, you know, a lot of people don't know the amazing wines that are made in so many different areas. Like, I feel like a lot of our greatest wines are very limited in scope, so they don't get out of the area. Yeah. And I'm sure it's the same way with the other great wine producing regions. And I would love to be able to kind of get the inside track on a few kind of out of the way places in Italy for sure.
So you touched a little bit upon farming and water and things that we need and how you hope you could see in the future, you know, the climate change would stop. Do you think we'll be drinking wine in 500 years' time, 1,000 years' time?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, who knows what shape it will take, you know, and then what the climate will do. There's plenty of places that it's too cold to grow grapes now, which that'll change probably. I hate to think what that means to the places that we love right now. But yeah, I don't have a doomsday approach, but I think absolutely. I mean, it's been going on for a long time and people need their vino and they'll find a way to do it.
So before we go, we play a little game at Wine Soundtrack because wine and music play a role together. And as we know in your life too, music has played such a dominant role. So based on some of the wines that you've been talking about, I'd like to have you tell me what you would drink with it. Now, I know that first Alsatian Riesling that you had was on a kayak, but if you could listen to music, or what is the song that it makes you think of?
It's like a super clear, clean, something that like lets you sink into it. So maybe Steve Reich, music for 18 musicians. It's got a logic to it, but it's a totally immersive environment that while it's new, it also like there's a strict logic to it. That's the kind of like scientist in me. There's like there has to be precision as well as clarity and definite. There's a direction and it pulls you forward in time and kind of lets you be in the moment while you're experiencing something that is almost timeless.
And what about that DRC wine, the Echezot, that you had the privilege to taste?
Wow, that'd probably be Sibelius Symphony No. 2. It's just so impeccably crafted. It will not change forever.
What about your Riesling that we're sipping here?
Maybe Arvo Pärt, his Te Deum, maybe something like that. I kind of feel like the Riesling should be vocal music. Kind of, it speaks to kind of your soul. It kind of goes straight to my mind and my soul, rather than it's not just a sensory experience. I feel like it connects a little bit deeper, and I feel like that clarity and cleanness of Arvo Pärt's music really shares a certain kind of linear focus to that the Riesling might.
Now, you said you drink a lot of rosé. So what does rosé conjure up for you?
It's just summer in a bottle, rosé does not need to be profound. It's just bright and lovely and light, and it just kind of makes you smile. You don't have to analyze it. Like that's the one wine that my mind can just say, I love this. And that's all there is to it.
So what music would go with that?
Oh, something light and happy. Spoon? I turn my camera on or something like that. So it's just lively and bright and modern and new and fresh, even though that's not a brand new song from them, but it's got a certain spirit and uplift to it.
And then last but not least, your estate Pinot Noir.
Because it's got so much of my heart and soul into it, I feel like it should be, maybe even like a James Brown or something, something like that. I feel good, James Brown. Like it comes from inside and goes out, as opposed to something you welcome in. It's like, it feels like that's something that came, from our own hands. So it feels like it should erupt out of you.
Well, and I want to thank you for joining us today. And it's such a pleasure to learn about Cartograph. I hope you could just remind people where they can find you, both online and in person.
Sure. We are based in Healdsburg. We're right off the square in Healdsburg, California, which is about 70 miles north of San Francisco. Absolutely great restaurant scene and a lot of great wine. And Cartograph Wines, it's like cartography without the Y, cartographwines.com. We can ship pretty much all across the United States. We're not exporting yet. With our little 2,000 case production, we're still slowly growing into a few other states and in local restaurants in Healdsburg. We don't have any distribution outside of California right now.
Thank you again for joining us. And I'm just going to have to encourage everyone to visit Cartograph if they want to learn what the 5 points are, because I think we only got to about 2 of them. So go visit Cartograph and have a great day. Thank you again for joining us.
Thanks for listening to a new episode of Wine Soundtrack USA. For details and updates, visit our website, winesoundtrack.com.